Hey, everybody, welcome and thank you for joining me today to learn more about how you can protect your freedom and independence in retirement. I'm excited to share this valuable information with you because this is very near and dear to my heart. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dave Jaslowski, one of the advisors here at Sound Financial. And the reason why we're doing this particular educational webinar is because we've had more and more of our clients in our community of people that we serve asking questions about how they can protect their assets in retirement. So we wanted to address some of those questions and provide you with the best knowledge and resources to be able to make good decisions surrounding your finances. So let's go ahead and jump right in. I'm guessing this guy was either surprised that he lived to be 100 or disappointed that he didn't blow out all the candles. I'm not sure which one it was, but would it surprise you to know that one of the fastest growing segments of our population is people joining the Century Club? So I have a question for you. How many of you would like to live to be 100 years old? If you said yes, why would you want to live to be 100? If you said no, why wouldn't you want to live to be 100? Well, there's a lot of benefits to living to be 100, like getting to see your grandkids grow up and having great grandchildren. There are also some challenges that this can pose for you in retirement, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So what is the secret to living happily ever after? Well, it's knowing two things. How long will you live? How much time do you have? And how much money will you need to fund your lifestyle during that time? Once you know these two things, then planning becomes a lot easier. So what is the probability of living to age 100 or living a long life? How many of you think it's answer A, 1 in 5, B, 1 in 10, C, 1 in 42, or D, 1 in a million? Well, if you answered C, then you answered correct. The chances or the probability of a 40-year-old man living to age 100 are 1 in 42. Answer A is the probability of a 40-year-old man living to age 90. Answer B is the probability of getting a speeding ticket when you're out of town. And answer D is the probability of getting struck by lightning. So the question is, how long will you live? And I would imagine that most of you know by now that you can probably expect to live at least 20 years into retirement with today's medical advances. And there's a good chance you may even live longer than that. But even if you don't live to 100, most likely, if you're married, one of you will live to be in your 90s. And that could mean 30 or more years in retirement. If you look at these numbers here, the gray number represents men, the green number represents women, and if you look and see, the black number represents a couple. And so there's a 50% probability that a couple will live, one of those people will live to age 92. There's a 25% probability, 1 out of 4, that for every couple out there, one of the couple will live to age 97. And then a 5% probability that one of them will live to age 100. And so a lot of people nowadays are underestimating how long they'll live. And because so many people underestimate how long they will live, they also underestimate how much money they will spend in retirement. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, based on 2016 figures, for older households, those defined 65 or older, spend an average of about $45,000 a year, or roughly $3,800 a month. So if you do some rough math on that, then you find that 45,000 times 30 years equals about $1.35 million. Or even at 20 years, the number's still pretty big at $900,000. So you may be asking yourself, what does this mean for me? It means that the possibility of living a longer life in retirement is a reality for a lot more people. So when planning for retirement, we want to think about all three phases: the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years. The go-go years are those years where you've been planning your whole life for, you've been saving all this money, you've been thinking, okay, when I retire, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to hunt more, I'm going to go fishing, I'm going to travel, I'm going to take cruises. Well, maybe not right now with the coronavirus stuff going on, but all the fun things that you wanted to do while you're in your working years, you said you were planning for all this stuff, and these are all the fun things you want to do while you're still healthy. Then the slow go years, you may still have the ability to go do some of this stuff, but maybe you've crossed all that stuff off your bucket list. You have all the t-shirts and the coffee cups from the places you visit, and you're just ready to spend some time with family and maybe slow down a little bit. Then the last stage, and what I would consider the most important stage, because the last years of your life, is the no-go years. And I've found that a lot of people don't end up planning for this stage of their life, because most people don't plan for most people plan for the go-go years and the slow-go years, because that's what you see on all the commercials. You see people playing golf or tennis or traveling, and so and rightfully so, we want to plan for those years and we want to enjoy those years, but a lot of people don't plan for these no-go years or the last years of their life because, one, they don't want to think about it, or two, they don't think it will happen. And the reality is that 100% of us are going to get older. So when you are planning for retirement, it's important to keep all three phases of retirement in mind. So I want to tell you a quick story about a couple, Alberta and Lawrence Webster. They were born in the 1920s, and Alberta ended up living in the 1920s and the 2020s. They ended up having 4 children and 7 grandchildren. And what's unique about this couple is that they and their son all had a cognitive impairment that required them to need long-term care. As I mentioned earlier, many people don't want to plan for the no-go years, but having had 3 people in my family already that have lived through this, I know that it can and does happen, that people do use some form of long-term care in their lifetime. You see, these people in this picture are my grandparents. My grandfather had dementia. My uncle, his son, had dementia. And my grandmother, who recently just passed away, had the early onset of Alzheimer's, or as she used to call it, sometimers. I used to go visit her in the nursing home, and this was when she was younger, or in the assisted living facility, and she would tell me, these people in here, they have sometimers. Sometimes they can remember and sometimes they can't. And so it's a reality. And also, having played professional hockey for 6 years, I've even had some of my friends in their 30s and 40s have issues, cognitive issues, because of all the hits they took. Did you know that every 65 seconds someone develops Alzheimer's, and 1 in 3 seniors will pass away with Alzheimer's or dementia? For me, the last 3 people in my family to pass away had it. So you can see why I'm so passionate about it, about helping people plan for this. So what is the probability that you would actually need long-term care? Well, they say that 57% of all people will use some type of long-term care at some point in their life, which means, statistically speaking, if you're married, there's a 100% chance that one of you will use some type of long-term care. 50%, 1 out of 2, there's a 100% chance that you will need some type of long-term care. If you're over 65, the probability increases to 72% of people needing it. So people over the age of 65, 7 out of 10 people will use some type of long-term care in their life. So if there's a possibility that we may need to have long-term care funding strategy, then the first step in building a plan is to estimate what the potential cost could be. So let's look at what it might cost. So there's really 3 different phases that we have when we think about long-term care. Stage 1 is home health care, which is what most people want to do. And there's actually been studies out there that recommend people stay at home as long as they possibly can, because of the benefits of being around your own environment, seeing your own pictures, and it actually helps with retaining your memory. And so this is the ideal scenario: home health care. On average, that can cost, at least in the southern states, about $3,285 a month. The next stage, assisted living facility, this could be where you maybe start to have some mobility issues or potentially some cognitive issues, and it's maybe not safe for you to stay at home, or you just need some help. And then the last stage, this is generally stage 3, the nursing home. This is generally when later stages of life, These, what I would call the no-go years. This is when you get to a point where you have the mobility issues, the cognitive issues, and you just need the help to get around. So what is the cost? Well, Genworth came up with this study, and they actually have a tool that you can use to estimate the cost in your area. And Genworth said that the national average for a private room in a nursing home cost around $100,000 in 2019. So if you do some math here, you say, okay, well, the average male stays 2.2 years. Well, that could end up costing $220,000 of your retirement plan. For females or women, 3.7 years times 300 times 100,000, you could be looking at $370,000. Now, here's where the challenge becomes in planning for this. 1 out of 5 people, or 20%, will stay more than 5 years. And so in this example here, we'd look at somebody that's got Alzheimer's. If they end up staying 20 years times $100,000, then that's $2 million. And most people don't have that much money left in their retirement plan when they start, get to a point where they've been spending that money all throughout their retirement. And then if they get to a later stage in life, they may have spent down some of those retirement assets and they don't have that money saved for that expense. So there's 4 different ways to pay for this. One, the first option is using your money. And it's the riskiest and can be the most expensive. If you can afford to self-insure, then you'll need to know what type of risk you're insuring. There are several factors you should consider when insuring the risk yourself. With the average person buying long-term care at age 59 and the average age someone enters a nursing home, a lot at age 79, a lot can happen in 20 years. In 2017, the 1-year inflation rate on long-term care was 5.5% for a private nursing home in the United States. You might look at that and you might think, okay, I can easily self-insure the cost today, but you might want to reconsider when you factor in inflation. If inflation stayed the same or on the same course at 5.5%, what would cost you $100,000 today would cost $291,775 20 years from now. That's almost triple the cost. And if you use the national average of a nursing home in 2019 at $100,000 roughly, and factor the average stay in 2019, which was between 2.5 to 3 years, and add 5.5% inflation, then you'd be looking at a cost of about $878,000 in 20 years. So if you end up staying 5 years or more, you could end up paying well over $1 million. And like I mentioned earlier, the reality for most of us is that most people don't have $1 million left in their retirement plans when they reach age 79 or older, because they've been using the retirement assets to pay for living expenses. And that's one of the biggest challenges that we see. We don't want to necessarily sacrifice our todays for tomorrow, but we know that tomorrow's coming and we need to plan for that. So, do you have a plan that will last as long as you do? Now, this really shocked me. I've been doing this for over 17 years, and I was always told that women end up living longer and staying longer in nursing homes than men, and these latest stats didn't end up holding up. In a recent survey of leading long-term care insurers, 5 out of 7 carriers showed where men met or exceeded the length of claim for women. Planning for the average length of care would have only covered a fraction of the care needed, and the belief that the average lengths of care are sufficient could have led to difficult financial decisions in the future. So a lot more people are opting for long-term care income plans that will last as long as they do. So the next option is family. And quite often, family is willing to help out. In fact, when I found out my grandmother was having some issues, I immediately dropped everything I did, and I flew up to Canada to see her and to visit with her and to be there for her. Now, the challenge when this kind of thing happens is, as a what I would call the sandwich generation, I had to make some decisions at that point. My oldest one was in a basketball tournament, and although it was no decision for me, I was going to jump on a plane and go up there and be with my grandmother and be there to help. There are some decisions you have to make that do end up affecting you, because you have to take time away from your family and then go to be with your grandparents or your mom or dad. And so it's not a matter, there's really two questions that need to be answered here when you're talking about family. And those questions are: one, are they willing? And two, are they capable? And what's the cost? And like I said, almost everybody out there is willing to help out, but you got to figure out what the cost is. And so there was a study done by MetLife. And according to this study, they said adult child caregivers in the US suffer a cumulative loss of nearly $3 trillion in earnings. For sons, the average is about $283 when you include wages, pension, and Social Security. And the news is even worse for daughters, who lose an average of $324,000. And I saw this when I went up to be with my grandmother and care for her. You know, the difference between for me, it was my cousins were there, and my mom and my aunt was there. But for the most part, my cousin is a nurse, and she was helping with a lot of things like brushing my grandmother's hair and doing makeup. I would have gladly done that, but as you can see from the picture at the beginning, I don't have any hair and I'm not very good at doing makeup. But I gladly would have helped out. But there's just certain things that the daughters will do, or in our case, the nieces were doing, and my aunts were doing, and my mom in taking care of my grandmother. And so, but the bottom line is, when you're looking at caring for a loved one, it can be the equivalent of working about a 40 to 60 hour a week job. And many care givers end up having to give up their full-time job, which has an impact financially on their income and ability to save. According to the Family Caregiver Alliance, the average age of an adult child serving as a caregiver is roughly 49 years old. This is generally when most people, or many people, are looking to accelerate their savings because they may have children that have graduated college or have paid down some other expenses and now have some discretionary income to save for retirement. If that extra income is going towards caring for a loved one, then retirement savings would be reduced. And they may end up having to work longer to save enough for retirement. So there's also other costs that a lot of times the caregivers will chip in, things like, food and utilities and medical bills. And on average, that can average about $7,000 a year. So while tackling both elder care and caring for children can be done, most parents don't want to burden their children with this. So while you may have family members that are willing to care for you, if the need arises, you may want to consider other options, because perhaps the biggest cost with caring for a loved one is the emotional and physical impact on the caregivers and their wealth and well-being. So there are some other costs that are associated with this. Stanford University did a study that said 40% of family givers for Alzheimer's patients whose responsibility lasted 10 to 15 years, they end up dying before the person they were taking care of from stress-related disorders, which is crazy. Exhaustion, anger, guilt, stress, anxiety, depression have all resulted from unrelieved caregiver for a chronically ill family member, and can lead to what quite often is referred to as caregiver stress syndrome. When you factor in the financial, physical, and emotional stress of caring for a loved one, it rarely makes sense, or you would have to ask yourself if it makes sense. It doesn't mean that you can't still be there for your loved one. You'll just play the role of a son, a daughter, or a spouse instead of a caregiver. And this will give you the opportunity and time and energy to enjoy your time with your loved one and relive all the great memories you've created together. So the third option is government. There are some government programs that you could potentially access. Medicare pays for 100% for the first 20 days. For days 21 through 100, you pay a copay, and after that, you're on your own. So I I always recommend when I'm helping people plan for this, don't plan on Medicare being there for your long-term care needs. Medicaid is a possibility, but you have to give away most of your assets, and there's some rules surrounding that. There's some look back rules on that. And rarely does Medicaid cover in-home care, adult daycare, assisted living facilities, and respite care. So there are some there's some limitations on Medicaid as well, and the biggest thing is you lose control of where you're going to get your care from. The last option and the fourth way you can pay for this is to transfer the risk. So there's two ways to transfer the risk. There's the old way and the new way. The old way is the traditional insurance plan, which is you pay as you go. There's typically no return of premium. If you don't use it, you lose it. It does have affordable premiums. There are some tax benefits, but the premiums can increase. And the reason why insurance companies came out with a new way is because a lot of people were complaining about their insurance rates going up or their insurance premiums going up. And so they came out with a new plan that does have a guaranteed premium. Under the new plan, if you don't use it, you don't lose it. You still get some of the tax benefits. The premium is guaranteed to never increase. And there are also some strategies that you can use under the Pension Protection Act to shift some other assets to be tax advantageous. So we can talk about that later if you're interested. So what should you do next? So the first thing you got to do is you got to have the talk. You got to sit down with your family and you got to talk about this. It's important to talk about that. Review your plan, explore your options, and to get agreement on the plan. So in order to live happily ever after, I think it's important that you think about how you want to live in retirement. And when I help people plan for retirement and they're thinking about what they want to do in retirement, they always tell me, they say, well, I said, well, what are you going to do when you get to retirement? Well, I'm going to go fishing. I'm going to buy a boat. I'm going to get a membership to the country club. I'm going to travel more. I'm going to do all these things. And then they get to retirement and they end up not doing some of those things. And I say, well, why are you not doing those things? And they say, well, just in case I need some money for this, or just in case I need some money for medical expenses. And so they end up living this just in case retirement, and they never end up spending any of that money that they saved all their life for. And then what do? They pass it on to the kids. And what do the kids do? They buy the boat, they go get a membership at the country club, and they do all that thing. So my point is that while you're still able and capable, I want you guys to be able to enjoy retirement and not live a just in case retirement, but live the retirement that you're meant to live. And if you do plan right, then you can have a plan that will allow you to be able to do that. So we'd love to hear from you. I've set up a link to my calendar so that you can schedule a time to ask some questions about anything you might want to know more about. Just click on the link. It's www.soundfsg.com/contact. You can just copy and paste that into your web browser, or just go to our website, soundfsg.com. Or if you just want to call our office and set up a time to talk, and so we can ask any questions that you might have, the phone number is 601-856-3825. And so I would love to talk to you and learn more about your situation and see if I can help. Until then, have a blessed day, stay safe, and as always, make good decisions with your finances. Thank you.